Every once in a while, a report comes along that doesn't just analyse the problems of our world, but reshapes how we think about them. And for me, that report in 2024 was Oxfam's Multilateralism in an Era of Global Oligarchy. Actually, it's not really a report. I think it calls itself a media briefing. But what sets it apart for me isn't just its sharp critique of inequality or its call for systemic reform. It's the way that it connects the dots between wealth concentration, cultural priorities, and the erosion of the public good. I went to the launch in New York, which had great speakers, including Ronald Lamola, who's South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Amitabh Bhatt, the Executive Director of Oxfam International, writer, political analyst and activist Nanjala Nyebola, and Karen Attiya, Washington Post columnist. And I'll share the link to that in the notes below. I really recommend it. It was a brilliant presentation. For me, it helped confront uncomfortable truths about how deeply our obsession with money has infiltrated every aspect of society, from politics to academia to culture. And this analysis of Oxfam's is obviously based on years of campaigning, highlighting that extreme inequality is a structural barrier to solving global problems. The concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a few has created what Oxfam terms a global oligarchy. And these ultra-rich individuals and corporations don't merely benefit from the status quo, they actively shape it to protect their interests, often at the expense of collective progress. Take climate change. For instance, the report says that the richest 1% emit more CO2 than the bottom 2/3 of humanity combined. And these same elites wield outsized influence over climate negotiations, ensuring that meaningful reforms are watered down. Similarly, during the COVID-19 pandemic, pharmaceutical corporations, driven by profit motives, blocked intellectual property waivers that could have saved millions of lives in poorer countries. These examples aren't just failures of policy, they're symptoms of a system designed to prioritise profit over people. And one of the most striking aspects of the report for me is its critique of how the cultural obsession with money perpetuates these systemic problems. This isn't just about billionaires hoarding wealth, it's about how our societies have come to value wealth as the ultimate measure of success. And this shift has seeped into every corner of our lives, from academia to the arts, eroding the institutions that once served as counterweights to unchecked greed. And anyone who's got kids knows how obsessed they are with millionaires. Universities, once the guardians of intellectual freedom and the pursuit of public good, have increasingly adopted corporate models. Research agendas are shaped not by societal needs, but by market potential, often dictated by the interests of private funders. Fields that could challenge the status quo, like climate science, social justice, or public health, are sidelined in favour of projects with immediate commercial applications. And this commodification of knowledge doesn't just distort academia's mission, it reinforces the power structures that this Oxfam report critiques. And arts and culture, traditionally spaces for critical reflection, collective identity, have so often been co-opted by the logic of profit. Films, books, music are increasingly designed not to challenge or inspire, but to sell. Museums and theatres, once bastions of public engagement, now rely on corporate sponsorships that often dictate programming. This cultural shift limits the scope of our imagination and narrows the possibility for envisioning a better world and, again, thinking about our kids, what are the influences they're under. And I think what makes Oxfam's thinking especially timely is its focus on how these dynamics play out on the global stage. So unlike many analyses that blame the failure of multilateralism on geopolitical tensions, clearly somewhat true, the report identifies extreme inequality as the real culprit. It argues that the ultra-rich and their corporate allies use their wealth to shape international rules in their favour, whether by lobbying against global tax reforms, influencing debt relief negotiations, whatever it is, climate negotiations. I mean, the irony is, and I remarked on this as I chatted with the report's authors afterwards, that it was launched actually with a very powerful speech at the Ford Foundation, one of the homes of billionaire oligarchy in a way. But ironically, some of these foundations are now the most powerful allies of de-oligarchification, new word, Of course, the report doesn't stop at critique. It also offers hope. It points to the leadership of global South countries in pushing for reforms, from Brazil's call for a global minimum tax on billionaires to Africa's advocacy for a UN tax convention. And these movements show that alternatives to oligarchic dominance are not only possible, but are already emerging. The report's most powerful message, I guess, is that the fight against oligarchy is not just about fairness, it is about survival. And the answer is building solidarity across borders, challenging a narrative and a system that is failing us all. I mean, it's a long road, building solidarity, just 2 words, isn't it? But who knows how to do that? And that's the challenge. And we need to be willing to challenge not just the wrong policies, but the cultural values that underpin them.